Hi there, welcome to Latinas Uprising. This is a space for Latinas to talk about how to get to law school, through law school, and how to succeed as a new attorney. I'm Nubia, and I'm here to talk to you about why law school is so toxic. So you might hear a lot of lawyers telling others, prospective law students, to not go to law school. You might hear law students tell you not to go to law school, and if you're in the midst of it, you might also be nodding your head saying, yes, people shouldn't go to law school. It's such a toxic environment. It really does a number on your mental health, and it can just feel like a bad experience from beginning to end with just a few moments of goodness kind of sprinkled in between. It shouldn't have to be this way, and I hope it's not that way for you, but it often is. And the reason for that is because of the way law school is structured, because of the way the legal profession is in and of itself. So I want to talk about that, but I also want to offer you some guidance and some things to consider implementing in your own life so that it's not so horrible those 3 or 4 years that you're in school. The first, is it really so bad? Is it really so toxic? Yeah, it can be. It is not a great experience for most people. The system, the way it is created, it is not made for people of color. It is not made for people living in poverty. There's a lot of expectations of things that are just not often feasible for people who don't come from money. And so it's really difficult to succeed, or it feels like a lot of barriers in order to succeed. Not to say it's not possible, because it is, but it's just extra work added on top of you if you're a person of color, and if you're a woman, first gen, again, living in poverty, etc. But generally speaking, law school is bad for almost everyone. It is so competitive. So law school is competitive, but we're not supposed to admit that it's competitive, right? But we are competing for the best grade in every class. In fact, the best grade gets an award. We are competing with all of our classmates that we're graduating with our class to get the highest rank. We're competing with people to get fellowships, to get the first job offer, to get the best job offer. And you're supposed to do all of this all the while showing how smart you are and how brilliant you are, but you're not trying too hard. You're supposed to show this just comes naturally to you, that you're not struggling at all with this new kind of form of thinking. You're just a natural genius. You're not supposed to admit you need help or that you need extra support. Not at all. That's really how law school is kind of created. And so people hide the way that they're struggling. They hide the way that the tools that they use in order to cope or to understand materials. On the other side, in really toxic schools, they also find ways to sabotage other students. I hope the environment has gotten better, but I know of situations where people were hiding books, they weren't sharing notes, they were, not sharing information about job opportunities. All of this because this is an environment where you have to look out for number one. So it's not great. On top of that, oftentimes the professors are mean. There's just no other way to put it. They really tend to get some type of joy from putting their students on the hot seat, for making them look stupid, for making them look like they don't understand. And you have this type of faculty and staff who kind of create this environment as well. It's not warm, it's not welcoming, it does not open a space for academic curiosity. It's not about discussion and dialogue. It's really about kind of showboating who gets it the best and the fastest. And it's kind of silly, but that's essentially how it's structured. Why is law school this way? I believe it's because it trickles from the way the profession is. The legal profession is also toxic. It is adversarial by nature. It is competitive as well, but people can be really mean and can be uncivil. And it just creates this really horrible dynamic that makes it incredibly stressful and kind of a dog-eat-dog world where you're only really looking out for number one. And so number one being you and your client, right? And so it creates this really weird industry standard and behavior. And those folks eventually become professors, they become admin staff, they're the ones setting the standards in office spaces. And so naturally law school is going to mimic the profession, and it's going to be a bad experience. Why is the profession this way? My opinion, because of the ways that we view strength and authority and power. Normally the people who have created the legal standard or the legal industry standards have been men. they have used masculine traits to identify things that are strong and intelligent and good. So they use these masculine traits of aggressiveness, of being out of a cereal, of being mean, to show that they're strong and they're intelligent and they're going to get the case done. And those are kind of the standards that are used throughout the industry. That's why women, when we enter this field, this idea of like, we can't be nice, we can't look feminine, we can't do this, has always been these discussions we've had in the background, because we're trying to abide by these really hyper masculine standards of authority and strength. They are toxic, and you can think, oh no, you're just not strong enough. But no, if you look at the industry overall, lawyers have high rates of depression, high rates of addiction, high rates of alcoholism. We are unhappy because of the way we are expected to purport ourselves. It's just not a way that a good person behaves. It doesn't feel good to be a jerk. And people might say like, oh, you know, you get off on being a jerk, that's fine, but I do think that there's some maybe internal work you need to do with yourself to address the fact that that's how you feel good about yourself. I do think there's ways to be a good attorney for your client, for yourself, where you can be zealous, where you're not necessarily an asshole to other people, and I do think there's a school of thought that's leaning towards that way, that super aggressiveness is kind of going to the wayside, but it's going to take a while for the industry in and of itself to shift and for that to be felt in the law school. So in the meantime, what can you do as a law student to overcome this experience so it's not so horrible for you? First, I think it's important to recognize the structures within your law school and your legal community so that you understand that some things that are happening, the ways that you're being treated, the ways that you're being addressed, the expectations that other folks are showing, it's not necessarily you and your inability to adjust, but it's the system and the way that it has been structured. So one of the things that's helpful is to really recognize the norms and standards within your law school and your legal community, to recognize what's healthy and what's not, to recognize how you're reacting to it so that you're not automatically thinking, oh, I'm not capable of doing this because I'm not smart enough, I'm, not good enough, but to recognize when you're actually facing some type of underlying system that's kind of pushing against you. I think a good example for this is like in class when you're being cold called, maybe you have a professor who really enjoys making students feel like they're incorrect, makes jokes at their expense, makes you feel stupid, makes you feel nervous, and you might start thinking, that's me, like I'm not smart enough, I'm not capable. But it could also just be the way this person is approaching how they teach, that they value or see some value in making students feel dumb or scared. There isn't a value in that, but that's their perspective. And so when you recognize that it's not always you, that it's actually the ways that other people are behaving and the way that they're advancing these standards, it makes things a little bit better. The second thing I recommend is to find a healthy, emphasis on the healthy, coping mechanism for the stress that you face in law school. It's really important that you start cultivating healthy habits now. The thing is, in law school, it is such high-level stress that we tend to default to unhealthy habits. Smoking, that's a big one. Excessive drinking, that's another big one. Probably drug use, of course, right? Like lots of things that are not good for you. Eating poorly, lashing out at friends and family, like all of these things, because your stress tends to happen. And so you want to recognize what your stress, how you are responding to stress, and not dismiss it. You want to be able to have a healthy coping habit to fall back on when you are stressed. And the earlier you can start cultivating that in your career, the better, because if not, that then trickles into your own practice. And that's the third thing, really. It's how do we, as a collective, address the fact that the legal profession is a really unhappy one. Again, we have really high rates of depression, addiction, alcoholism, and that's not by accident. It's because things are so stressful. Why are they stressful? It's not just deadlines, it's not just working a lot. There's a lot of human element in the legal industry that we don't discuss because we're not supposed to, right? We're almost supposed to be robotic. But being a lawyer means you are working with clients often in the worst moments of their life. You're seeing humanity oftentimes at its worst. It is stressful. So this responsibility that you feel to your client, to the case, that can really make you nervous and stressed out. And even if you're not dealing with cases that feel life or death, you can be dealing with cases that have you feeling unfulfilled or guilty about the way you're using your law license. So there's all of these human feelings about what you're doing with your career that we're not supposed to address, that kind of festers, and then that's why you lash out, and that's why you are a jerk. That kind of vicarious trauma that happens as attorneys, we're not going to have appropriate coping skills to deal with the stress. When we can't address the stress, we will react negatively when we are stressed. We will be mean, we will have outbursts, we will be aggressive in ways that we don't have to be, and then that becomes the norm of the industry, which is then taught and perpetuated in the law school. And it just continues this really horrible cycle. So, having said all that, should you go to law school because it's so toxic? Should you go to law school because it's so toxic? Yes, you should go to law school. If you are a woman, if you are a Latina, if you are a first generation, someone who grew up in poverty, I am always going to encourage you to consider law school. I think it is such an important field for us to get into. Not only will it benefit you and change the trajectory of your abilities and income earning potential, it help your family, help your community tenfold. So yes, absolutely. Not only will it help you in that way, but in turn, you will actually help the industry. You will bring in a new perspective, you will bring in new approaches, you will bring in new ways to show that strength and ability that's different from toxic masculine traits, and it will make the profession better. So for my own selfish reasons, yes, I definitely encourage you to still consider law school, but I encourage you to go into it with eyes wide open, understanding that it is a stressful space, it is not a healthy space, and the more you go into it with eyes open, with coping mechanisms at hand, the better it will be for you. Now, this was a real doom and gloom video. I don't want to leave you with this idea that it's 3 years of hellscape, because it's not. There's a lot of great moments. You're gonna make a lot of great friends. It's gonna change your perspective. It's gonna change your perspective on things, your ability to think. It really rewires your brain. You'll come out on top. So it's a really great experience, but it can be just so jarring. And those 3 years can be really difficult. And so again, going in with eyes open makes things a whole lot better, but absolutely you should consider this, especially if it's been a long-term goal of yours. It should not dissuade you in any way. If you have any questions about law or practicing or law school in general, please ask me in the comments, send me a DM. Please like, share, subscribe. Make sure you follow this channel. Make sure you subscribe to latinasuprising.com. Connect with me on all platforms, and I will see you in the next video.